Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're plunging into, well, a real treasure trove for anyone curious about their UK family history. Census records.
Hmm.
We're talking England, Wales, Scotland here. These are basically official counts, population counts, taken every 10 years.
Snapshots in time, really.
Exactly. And they can reveal some incredible details about our ancestors.
Mhm.
We can currently access records from 1841 right up to 1921. That's because of the 100-year rule.
Right.
But it's more than just names and dates, isn't it? Our mission in this deep dive is really to give you some strategies, some pro-level tactics to uncover the stories hiding in these records.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, most people start off searching a name. That's the logical first step, obviously.
Yeah.
But to really unlock what these records hold, you kind of need to understand their quirks, the characteristics, and use some specific techniques.
Okay.
It's about moving from just finding someone to, well, understanding their life, their world. And we'll try and cover some good ground in about 20 minutes or so today.
Okay, right. So let's unpack this then. These census records, they weren't all the same, were they? The early ones are a bit different.
That's a really crucial point. Take the 1841 census. It's often the first one people find online. It has some really distinct features.
Like what?
Well, for starters, ages. Anyone over 15 often had their age rounded down to the nearest 5 years.
Oh, really? So like a 38-year-old might be down as 35.
Exactly. And birthplaces are less specific, too. You might just get the county, in England or Wales, or simply Scotland, Ireland, or even just foreign parts.
Wow. Okay. Vague.
Very. And maybe the biggest thing, relationships within the household, they aren't explicitly stated. Wife, son, daughter, none of that's there in 1841.
So the 1841, you have to be really careful then. You can't just dismiss someone if the age is a bit off or if you don't see son written next to them.
Precisely. You're doing more detective work, looking at the order people are listed, the surnames, the rough ages, piecing it together.
Right.
Now compare that to 1851 onwards. Big jump in detail. From then on, you usually get precise ages, the specific parish or town and county of birth, and crucially, those relationships to the head of household are stated.
So wife, son, lodger, servant, all that helpful stuff.
All that good stuff. And generally, the detail just keeps improving in the later census years, gives you much richer information to work with.
And quick point for listeners with Scottish roots, is there a specific place they should look?
Yes, good point. For Scottish census records, Scotland's people is really the place to go. They often have better quality images and potentially more accurate transcriptions for those specific records. Definitely worth checking there.
Good tip. Okay, so moving on from the different types of census, let's talk about actually searching. Starting with names. Sounds simple, but I guess there are pitfalls.
Oh, definitely. The biggest one is probably spelling variations. Surnames, especially back then, could be quite fluid.
Fluid, yeah.
Your ancestor might be Smith in one census, Smith in the next, maybe even Smythe.
Right.
And first names, too, you see abbreviations all the time, like William for William.
Or J's for James.
Exactly. And diminutives, nicknames. Lizzie for Elizabeth, Maggie for Margaret. They might use the informal version.
So if you're stuck looking for Elizabeth, try Lizzie or Beth or something else.
Absolutely. Be creative. And then, of course, there are transcription errors.
Yes. When someone tries to read that old handwriting.
Precisely. Someone misreads a letter, types it wrong. It happens. And that's where wildcards are just invaluable.
Okay, explain wildcards.
So most databases let you use them. An asterisk usually replaces multiple letters. So if you search Smith, it could find Smith, Smith, Smythe, maybe even Smurth if that exists.
Handy.
Yeah. And a question mark usually replaces just a single letter. So J could find Jane and June. Really useful for those little variations or potential errors.
And maybe think phonetically, too, how it might have sounded.
That's another good angle, yes.
Cool.
How might an enumerator have written down a name they only heard spoken?
Okay, so you need to think like a detective again. But what if you've tried all the name variations, used wildcards, and you're still drawing a blank?
Right, that happens. And that's often when the less is more strategy comes in.
Less is more. How so?
Well, if putting in lots of details, name, exact year, specific place isn't working, try taking some information out.
Okay.
If you're not 100% certain on the birth year, broaden the age range, search plus or minus 5 years, maybe even 10.
Right. Give yourself some wiggle room.
Exactly. Or if the birthplace you have from, say, a marriage certificate seems odd or doesn't match other things, try removing it from the search temporarily.
Ah, okay. Don't let one potentially wrong detail block you.
Precisely. Start with what you're most sure of, usually the name, maybe a rough age and general location, and then add other details back in one by one. Sometimes being too specific, if one detail is slightly off, filters out the right person.
That makes a lot of sense. Start broad, then narrow down. Okay, here's another tactic I've heard about. Searching by address.
Yes, this can be a real game changer, especially if you're dealing with a very common surname.
Like Smith or Jones again?
Exactly. If you found an address for your ancestor, maybe from a birth or marriage certificate or an old directory, try searching the census using that address.
How does that help?
It can help you pinpoint the exact family, even if the name is slightly misspelled or transcribed incorrectly in the index. It verifies you found the right household in the right place.
So even if Smith is written as Smith at number 14, searching for number 14 Acacia Avenue might still find them.
It might, and some websites even let you browse the actual census images page by page, street by street.
Oh, wow.
Which is brilliant if the transcriptions for that area are known to be poor or incomplete. You can manually scan the street.
That sounds really useful, yeah. Okay, so let's say you found your family either by name or address. The fun part starts then, right? Looking at who's actually in the house.
Yes, decoding the household dynamics. And this is where those relationships, stated from 1851 onwards, become gold dust.
Wife, son, daughter.
Lodger, servant, visitor, nephew, mother-in-law. It paints such a rich picture. But don't just look at your direct ancestor. Analyze the whole household listed.
What should we be looking for?
Well, are there married children living next door or nearby? Are there grandchildren visiting? Maybe an elderly parent has moved in. Look out for boarders or lodgers. They might be witnesses on later family documents. Servants, too.
Interesting connection. And for 1841, without those labels.
You're back to inferring. Looking at the ages, the likely family groups based on surname and order of listing, you can often make pretty good guesses, but you just have to be a bit more cautious. It's like a little snapshot of their social unit at that moment.
And then there are occupations listed, too. They must tell a story.
Oh, absolutely. Occupations tell you about social standing, skills, maybe even migration. You might see whole families of agricultural laborers or miners or factory workers.
You might see them move for work.
Exactly. You might track a family moving from a rural area to an industrial town. It's also really useful to track an individual's occupation across different censuses. Did it change? Did they move up or down?
Does it help distinguish people?
It can do. While you get lots of vague terms like laborer, sometimes you get a very specific trade master mariner, lace maker, coal hewer. That can definitely help separate two John Smiths living in the same town.
Right, more specific is better. Okay, what about birthplaces? Seems straightforward, but I bet there are nuances.
There are. The parish or town and county of birth from 1851 is obviously vital for tracing origins, but you need to be aware that county boundaries changed over time.
So a village might be listed in Lancashire in one census and, I don't know, Yorkshire in another?
Potentially, yes, or boundaries within counties shifted, so check old maps if something looks odd. Also, look at the birthplaces of all the children in the family.
Why is that?
If the older children were born in, say, Devon, and the younger ones in London, that's a pretty clear sign the family moved between those dates.
Tracks their migration path.
Exactly. And don't just look at your family's birthplaces, look at their neighbors. Do lots of people nearby come from the same village or region?
Yeah.
That might suggest chain migration, people moving together.
Community migration. Yeah.
And always check for consistency. Does your ancestor give the same birthplace across multiple censuses? If it changes, you need to question why. Was one entry wrong? Did they genuinely provide different information?
Lots to consider there. And thinking about neighbors leads perfectly into this FAN club idea I've heard genealogists talk about.
Yes. The FAN Club, it stands for Friends, Associates, and Neighbors. It's a brilliant principle. Basically, don't research your ancestors in isolation.
Look at the people around them.
Exactly. When you find your ancestor on a census page, don't just stop there. Read the page before, read the page after, who lived next door, who lived down the street.
What might you find?
You might find other relatives, cousins, in-laws living nearby with the same surname. You might find people who came from the same, perhaps unusual birthplace as your ancestor. Or you might spot someone who later turns up as a witness on your ancestor's marriage certificate.
Ah, connecting the dots.
It's all about context. These neighbors, these associates, they were part of your ancestor's community. Their records might hold clues to your own family's story, especially if you hit a brick wall.
So look outwards, not just at the direct line.
Okay, that makes sense.
Now, once you've found a family, presumably you want to follow them through time.
Oh, definitely. Track the whole family unit across all the available census years. 1841, 51, 61, 71, right up to 1921 if they lived that long.
And what are you looking for as you track them?
You're looking for logical progression. Does the family composition make sense? Are the children aging by roughly 10 years each time? Are there new babies?
What if a child is missing?
Good question. If a child is there in, say, 1871 and 1891, but not in 1881, don't panic immediately. They might have been visiting other relatives on census night, or away at boarding school, or perhaps working away from home as a servant or apprentice.
Okay, check elsewhere.
Check elsewhere. Also, be prepared for slight age discrepancies. People didn't always know their exact age, or let's be honest, sometimes they might have fibbed a little.
Shaved off a few years there.
Or added some on, so allow a little flexibility. But tracking them decade by decade really builds a much more complete and, importantly, verified picture of the family over time. You see the story unfolding.
It really brings them to life more.
Okay.
Okay, we've covered a lot of great strategies, but you have one final piece of advice, something you consider absolutely crucial.
Yes, and it's simple but so important. Always view the original image of the census record.
Not just the transcription.
No, transcriptions are fantastic finding aids. They help you locate people quickly, but they are interpretations and they can contain errors or omissions. The original handwritten page collected by the enumerator, that is the primary source. That's the actual record.
So why is seeing the image so vital?
Several reasons. First, you can check the transcription yourself against the handwriting. Did they read that name correctly? Was that age transcribed right? Second, you see exactly who lived next door, which is vital for that fan club research we talked about.
Right, the neighbors aren't always transcribed fully.
Exactly. Third, you might spot extra details, maybe marginal notes written by the enumerator or corrections they made, things that don't make it into the index. And finally, it just gives you a much better feel for the neighborhood, the street, the context.
So the transcription is like the map reference, but the image is the actual photograph of the place.
That's a great analogy, yes. Use the transcription to find the house, but look at the image to see the whole street and understand what's really going on. Treat transcriptions as guides, but the image is king.
Fantastic advice. Okay, so to sort of wrap up our deep dive today, it's clear that getting the most out of UK Census records goes way beyond just typing in a name. By understanding how each census year differs, getting clever with name searches and wildcards, maybe using address searches, really analyzing the whole household.
Looking at occupations, birthplaces, definitely checking out the neighbors with that FA and club idea.
Tracking families across the decades, and crucially, always looking at those original images. You can uncover some incredibly rich, nuanced stories about your ancestors.
Absolutely. It transforms it from just collecting names and dates into, well, connecting with actual lives lived. Even in a short focused search session, you can find so much.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What seemingly tiny detail buried in a census page, maybe a neighbor's unusual job or a child's surprising birthplace or a visitor listed in a house, what little thing might be the key that unlocks a huge part of your family's past?
That's the excitement of it.
So what small detail will you uncover in your next census deep dive? Thanks for joining us.